Hello, dear friends. Again, it is wonderful to be with you. I hope you're all doing well, feeling well, doing everything you should be doing. That washing of the hands for at least 20 seconds is something that's becoming a habit for you. I hope it is. You know, the time it takes to sing happy birthday twice. I changed keys in my head for the second time. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you. By the way, I was asked by someone whose name do I use when I sing happy birthday? I realized no one. I just repeat happy birthday. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to, etc. Whom do you sing happy birthday to? An interesting question. I'm sure we have all worked it out for ourselves somehow. Anyway, I hope you're all washing your hands, keeping your hands away from your face, your mouth, your nose, your eyes. It's clearly the most difficult rule to follow. It takes enormous concentration and practice. Stay at least 6 feet away from anyone not living with you. And best of all, especially in the older demographic, stay home with us on JBS. Just stay with us. And again, we're planning more and more programming for you, and I'll be telling you more and more about that as we go along. Right now, however, I'd like to turn our attention away from the virus and take a look at the political scene in Israel once again. It looks like some real progress is being made in the attempt to form the next Israeli government. And to give us a very special perspective, I'm pleased to have with us JBS's Senior Vice President and former Media Consul for the Israeli Consulate in New York, Shahar Azani. Shahar, how are you?
I'm fabulous, Mark. Pleasure to be with you and with all of our viewers.
How's the day been for you? How the last couple of days been? Everybody in your household holding up?
All is great and everybody is holding up thanks to the continuous content provided by JBS.
That's wonderful. So Shahar, we hear some rumblings about the fact that there's going to be now, we're on the way towards a coalition government. It starts with a change in the Knesset, the Speaker of the Knesset. Step by step, bring us up to date.
Well, first of all, this has been a monumental day in Israeli politics. As we remember, Israeli political system has been stranded in the mud for over a year now, with unprecedented 3 rounds of elections in the past year. What we have seen in the last couple of days, and especially this morning, is a moment of decision making. You know, the big question has been blue and white and Likud, the right-wing bloc, negotiating for a national unity government. Each party tried to oust the other, and there was no resolution, as there is no other way to say it, but the Israeli people is divided in the middle. When Benny Gantz, the week began, if you remember, with the replacement of the Speaker of the Knesset, when Yuli Edelstein, as a result of the Supreme Court ruling, had to resign from his position.
Okay, stop for 1 minute, Shahar, because when you were with us last time, you told us it wasn't clear what Edelstein would do. What did, in fact, happen between him and the Supreme Court?
Initially, he refused to convene the Knesset for the election of a new Speaker of the Knesset. And he said that should be done only after a government is formed. The Supreme Court ruled against him and said that if there is a majority of the members of Knesset who are interested in electing a new speaker, they should be able to do so. And they issued a decree for him to convene the Knesset for that purpose. Instead of convening the Knesset for that purpose, Yuli Edelstein chose not to do so, but rather to submit his resignation. His resignation was supposed to enter into force, according to the regulations of the Knesset, in 48 hours. That was from yesterday to Friday. The Supreme Court intervened as a result of another petition and said that due to the circumstances, his resignation will come into force immediately, and a veteran member of the Knesset will assume responsibilities immediately to elect a speaker. Now, let's pause for a minute to understand what is the meaning of electing a speaker in the context of establishing a national unity government. The speaker controls procedures in the House, and Prime Minister Netanyahu was very much fearful that a Speaker of the House who will be anti-Netanyahu will assist in pushing through legislation aimed at preventing Netanyahu from being able to be a prime minister and to rule. And this is why the position of the speaker was very important for him. And this is why he viewed Yuli Edelstein removal as a sign of no confidence or as a belligerent sign coming from blue and white. Now, here comes the...
Okay, again, we're going to take it step by step. What I don't understand is what was motivating Edelstein? Why didn't he make an issue of this?
Why didn't he? He made an issue of this. He chose not to follow the Supreme Court's ruling and resign rather than convene the Knesset. So it was an issue in principle for him as well, in what many viewed was a mistake in trying to undermine the judicial branch of the State of Israel and the Supreme Court. The bottom line was that he chose to resign, and the Supreme Court instituted immediately, rather wait 48 hours, the veteran member of Knesset to start to manage the Knesset, so to speak, and to convene the Knesset to elect a new speaker. Now, here comes our drama. Amir Peretz, the head of Labour Party, is the veteran member of Knesset, and he was elected to convene the Knesset for the purpose of electing a speaker. Now, Netanyahu comes and tells Gantz, we are talking about unity, but if you're going to elect a speaker who is going to move forward with the anti-Netanyahu legislation, that's done. I'm done. I'm not going. I understand from that we're headed into a fourth election. That's a no confidence sign to the core. Now, to understand what was under this, what caused this, is the initial intention of Blue and White was to put in that position one of the Yesh Atid's members, one of Yair Lapid's faction within Blue and White, Yesh Atid, and that was member of Knesset Meir Cohen.
Okay, again, stop 1 second. Explain to our audience the extent to which blue and white, and all we hear all the time in America is there's the blue and white party and the Likud party. In fact, blue and white is a coalition in and of itself, correct?
Very true, Mark. Blue and white is a coalition of three parties. It includes, one is Yesh Atid, headed by Yair Lapid. The second one is Telem, headed by former Minister of Defense and Chief of Staff Bogi Ya'alon, Moshe Ya'alon. And a third one was Benny Gantz's Strength for Israel, in Hebrew, Chosen LeIsrael, plus Gabi Ashkenazi, who is a stellar addition to the blue and white, what they call the leadership cockpit, that include the three chiefs of staff, Ya'alon, Ashkenazi, and Gantz, in addition to Yair Lapid. This is the constellation, the coalition that was established. Now, there has been fragmentation. There has been disagreement within that coalition. It didn't start now. It actually started after the second round of election in October of 2019, when the duo Gantz-Ashkenazi was more lenient and pushed in the direction of establishing a national unity government, but Lapid and Ya'alon were very much against it. And at the time, the Lapid line won, and we ended up with a third round of election.
Yes.
Now, this time, we reached a point where Netanyahu tells Gantz, if we're serious about unity, I can't have Meir Cohen from Yesh Atid as the Speaker of the Knesset, because I know where Yair Lapid stands and where Yesh Atid stand vis-a-vis myself, and to me, that's a no-go. So Benny Gantz comes up with an idea. He says, how about instead of having Meir Cohen, I, Benny Gantz, will be temporarily elected as the Speaker of the Knesset. Now, let's understand that for a minute.
Yes.
Benny Gantz comes to the cockpit and says, this is the decision we have to make. Are we more in favor of ousting Netanyahu as prime minister, or are we more in favor of electing me, Benny Gantz, as the prime minister? And what was clearly the indication from Yair Lapid and Bogi Ya'alon, that they are more, and by the way, Avigdor Lieberman and Ahmed Tibi from the Joint Arab List, was more in the direction of let's elect Meir Cohen and oust Netanyahu rather than push forth for national unity government. So they, this morning, Yesh Atid's Yair Lapid and the Joint Arab List and Avigdor Lieberman, they all refrained from voting in favor of Benny Gantz. Benny Gantz was voted in as Speaker of the Knesset with the votes of his own faction within Blue and White and Netanyahu's right-wing bloc.
Okay, I want to make sure we understand this. You're saying that Yair Lapid, Avigdor Lieberman, it doesn't matter at the moment how the Joint Arab List voted, but you're saying that Avigdor Lieberman and Yair Lapid would rather have had a fourth election if it meant Netanyahu was gone than establishing a unity government where Netanyahu would serve in conjunction with Gantz.
Well, you know, before the fourth election, let's go, because fourth election is we look into the future. Let's look into the past. The past has some exclamation marks for us, Mark. In the past, only a few weeks ago, Yair Lapid and Avigdor Lieberman were in favor of establishing a government supported by the Joint Arab List, supposedly one of Lieberman's greatest adversaries in the Knesset, rather than move forward now with the government under or with Benjamin Netanyahu. That is an issue of the past. They were already breaching a promise to the electorate when they said they will do nothing if it's only meant a government with the support of the Arabs. They already broke that promise. And now when the moment came to decide whether they were willing to go with Netanyahu or have a government supported by the Joint Arab List, they chose the Arab List rather than supporting a government with Netanyahu. And that meant that they were absent on the vote for their own person, their own candidate, who just only a month ago and in the last year was their prime ministerial candidate.
Okay.
And Benny Gantz himself chose this moment to take a decision.
Okay. And this is a digression, but digress just for a moment. What does this say to the Israeli electorate, to the Israeli people? And how do you think the Israeli people will respond to the fact that Lieberman and Lapid were ready to, in essence, torpedo an attempt to create a coalition government, a unity government? What do you think the public response is going to be, Shahar?
Well, first of all, they have no ability to undermine the coalition government if and when it's established. We have to put this caveat because we don't have the national unity government just yet. But we know that between Benny Gantz's faction and Bibi's bloc, we have 73 members of Knesset. But I'll tell you what it says. This morning, the major Israeli newspaper of Yediot Aharonot published an op-ed by Israeli singer and icon Yoram Gaon. In his op-ed, Yoram Gaon basically says, enough is enough. The Israeli public is tired with the political shenanigans. We are in times of great need. The people is divided. We need a national unity government, and especially with such a crisis that the world is facing with the coronavirus. And the sentiment within the mainstream Israeli public is such that we need to move in the direction of stability. And in addition, I can tell you that after breaking the promise to the Israeli electorate with the attempts to create a government supported by the Joint Arab List, Blue and White would have paid a heavy price in a fourth if there had been election. So Benny Gantz achieved something here. He decided when he saw that his own friends or partners were willing or more interested in ousting Netanyahu than supporting him, because they actually did not support him to be the Speaker of the Knesset, he understood that there is no viability here. He didn't join politics to run endlessly against Netanyahu. There has to come a moment where you need to make a decision. And he came into politics to govern, and in addition, his goal was to escort Netanyahu out. So if Lapid's vision was, let's say it bluntly, give him a kick in the tuchus and push him out of the Balfour prime ministerial residence, Benny Gantz was more in the direction of, let me take you by the hand, thank you for your service, and accompany you on your way out. And in creating such a national unity government, the big headline is this. For the first time, there is an expiration date on that glossy package that's called Benjamin Netanyahu. And
explain that. That's the key point, Shahar.
That's the key point.
Explain that.
For the first time, and as we saw Netanyahu only a couple of days ago on Israel's main news channel, when he looked into the camera, just like I do now, and said, Benny, join me, and I will leave office right when I'm supposed to. In a year and a half, September 2021, Benjamin Netanyahu will no longer be premier, and Benny Gantz will assume position. This is the promise he made to Benny Gantz. And
okay,
Benny
and do you expect Netanyahu to live up to that promise? Do you think the Israeli people expect Netanyahu to live up to that promise?
There is the $1 million question. You know, the value of a promise in the political sphere. You know, it was late Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir who once was asked, you promised so-and-so. He said, yes, I promised, but I didn't promise to fulfill my promise. So you never know what may happen at the end. However, I can tell you that this is Benny Gantz's biggest bet if we talk about the series of Bs, because he needed to take a decision now based on something that's going to happen in a year and a half from now. However, he will have to institute in that national unity government all of the necessary anchors to make sure that that indeed happens. And I'm not pessimistic like so many others in saying there is no chance on earth that's not going to happen. I mean, I think there is a chance that Netanyahu will move beyond. I think we have to take into account the fact that Netanyahu is facing criminal indictments and will have to deal with those. And I think that there are enough anchors, and there should be enough anchors on the ground, whether legal or others, that will allow Benny Gantz to take this bet. However, I think that what Benny Gantz saw before him was Tzipi Livni, who had a chance in 2009 to establish a coalition, and she failed and vanished from Israeli politics. Benny Gantz came this close to become Israel's prime minister in several campaigns in these past 3 elections, and I think that by taking this path, he is taking a chance and actually maybe fulfilling that dream of becoming Israel's premier in a year and a half from now.
Okay. What do you expect if now, by the way, Shahar, the bottom line is, as you and I are talking this moment, no formal agreement has been made for a unity government, correct?
Correct.
Okay. If there is a unity government, Shahar, what do you imagine the coalition number will be? Will it be just a very thin majority, or do you think it'll be a significant, strong coalition?
Actually, it's going to be a very different kind of government, because what you're going to have is you're going to have an equal partnership, right? An equal partnership between whom? Between Netanyahu's right-wing bloc that includes 58 members of Knesset and several parties, and between the narrow 15 members faction of Strength for Israel, Benny Gantz's. These are 15 members of Knesset. So first of all, together, you're talking about a starting point of 73 members of Knesset. That is a stable coalition. Now, in addition, you may find others who will support that coalition, yes, or may want to join it, whether it's Orly Levy, whom we've spoken about several times in the past, or others. So this is stable. But however, in the number of ministers, there is going to be equality between the 58 and the 15. That means that On Bibi's block, they're going to have to squabble to get positions, and on Gantz's block, almost all members of Knesset are going to become ministers.
Okay.
They're already talking about Benny Gantz being Minister of Defense, Gabi Ashkenazi being Minister of Foreign Affairs. So the agreement is in the works.
Okay. And where does this leave Lapid and Avigdor Lieberman once this unity government is created? Where did it leave them?
Well, very angry and very bitter. You've already seen in their declarations made today, they were eager to do everything that they could to depose Netanyahu and to remove him from Balfour, from the official residence of the prime minister. But let's look at the options for a minute, Mark. I think it's very important for us to understand what was Gantz's dilemma. He stands today at a point where blue and white, let's take a day, let's take yesterday. He stands at a point where blue and white looks into the polls and sees its power reduced because they broke the promise with the joint Arab list, and come fourth elections, their mandates are not going to be as colorful and happy as they have been so far. He also looks into his options. One option is to allow Netanyahu to continue governing under the emergency government because there is no viability now for a fourth election. It's impossible. There is no money. And throughout the coronavirus, it can't be that people are going to go en masse and vote. So one option would be national unity. Another option would be letting Netanyahu govern, wait for a few more months, and then go for a fourth election. But the Israeli electorate is flabbergasted. It's tired. It's flummoxed by this politics. And to see Netanyahu leading the government in the coronavirus era, and to see the blue and white faction harassing him in the Knesset was something that in Gantz's eyes and in many other eyes would have led to more downfall and decrease of blue and white's power. So Benny Gantz had to make a decision and said, under these circumstances, and by the way, like we said at the other time, had he taken the president's offer in October of 2019, he would have been prime minister in a couple of months. So instead of allowing Netanyahu to continue to govern endlessly, Benny Gantz said, I didn't do it in October, but now I'm going to finally take a decision and do it and move into a framework that allows us the national unity that the people of Israel wants and deserves and so very much desires, while having an end date to Netanyahu's term so that I can govern. And I think, personally, that it's healthier for Israeli politics because of the division in the people, not to create that kind of animosity by the negativity of the political process, but rather go to the unity and move forward.
Okay. What do you think the Israeli electorate now feels about Benny Gantz and Netanyahu? Have they both won in the eyes of the public? Is Gantz a hero? Is Netanyahu a hero? Has it changed their standing in any way among the Israeli people?
Well, of course, when you look into the extremes, you'll see a lot of criticism from the left towards Benny Gantz. Remember, we spoke about the animosity towards Netanyahu. And anybody who feels that really wanted Netanyahu out of Israeli politics now sees Netanyahu resurrected in an act of wizardry. Unbelievable, like the phoenix he rose. But my claim is, he didn't rise just because of his genius, and I'm not taking anything away from his political genius. I think he rose because of Lapid and Ya'alon's egos and their lack of ability to take advantage of the moment and look reality in the eye. They kept on holding on to this hope that they'll be able to depose Netanyahu, but they claimed that Netanyahu did not win. At the same time, they did not win. They did not have a viable option for a minority government or a government supported by the joint Arab list because the numbers were not there. So instead of acknowledging the political situation and mastering the art of politics, which is compromise, they chose to be obstinate in their position, so desirous to see Netanyahu ousted that they gave him another term as prime minister with their own hands. So I think that the majority of the Israeli public is appreciative and actually is sighing in relief in the sight that finally, after a year and a half, Israel is going to have a government. And like Gantz and Ashkenazi said, it is time to govern. It is time to lead. It is time to make a difference rather than make declarations as opposition, be part of a ruling coalition. Now, what's going to happen after 6 months? What's going to happen after the coronavirus? What's going to happen in the future? Nobody can tell.
I understand.
But I can tell you that the Israeli public was not eager at all for the prospects of a fourth round.
Again, to be clear, no unity government has yet been formed, but, 1 out of 10, where 10 is the most and 1 is the least, what do you think the odds are that by the beginning of next week we will have a unity government in Israel?
I want to say 9 because Gantz had better have a national unity government after he ditched, deserted, abandoned his friends with blue and white. I don't see any situation in which you don't have a national unity government. And think about this. Netanyahu is thinking, according to the talk within Israeli political ranks, Netanyahu is, right now, Benny Gantz is a speaker of the Knesset, but once the coalition is formed, Netanyahu is interested and he's going to have the speaker of the Knesset, one of his guys, quote unquote, to be nominated while he's prime minister, and then that's supposed to change when Gantz becomes prime minister. Again, because a prime minister needs the speaker to work out the Knesset's work. So Netanyahu is thinking, from what we are hearing, is to appoint Yuli Edelstein to the position of the speaker of the Knesset.
So Edelstein will be back.
So Edelstein will be back.
Yes. I know you have no way of...
Wonders of politics.
Yes, I know you have no way of knowing, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What do you think Netanyahu is feeling emotionally right now? Is he glad in some way that it is being resolved this way, or is it very painful for him that in essence he has agreed to end his long term, the longest of any prime minister in Israel's history, his long term of being prime minister? You know him a little bit, Shahar. What do you think?
My guess is immensely joyous at what happened today. First of all, because blue and white rose as this great monstrosity of an opposition to his rule. And his dream came true. He split them. There is no more blue and white. Now, officially, the name remains so far with Ya'alon and Lapid because they're the majority. But in essence, his great anti-Netanyahu coalition dispersed, disbanded with his immense political power. So he can't be anything else than incredibly happy to see this happening. In addition, Netanyahu is given the mandate and the public acceptance to continue to rule, not as a head of the transitional government, but as a legitimately elected prime minister for the next year and a half. It gives him a proper out of Israeli politics rather than being kicked in the behind. He's able to continue to govern until he's willing to hand the position to the next person, to Benny Gantz, in a year and a half. So in my eyes, I think Netanyahu should be grateful that he was able to reach this point where we have a government and his path out of politics is done in his time, on his terms, and the way he chose to do so along with Benny Gantz. I can't see it in any other way.
Okay. In some way, it's nice to hear you say this. So, Shahar, before I let you go, do you have any update for us on how Israel is dealing with the coronavirus? It still seems to have very, very few fatalities. But is there anything you can tell us at all about what you're hearing about Israel's doing right now?
Yeah, I hear the Israeli measures taken to keep people in the home are severe. The police is roaming the streets trying to identify runners, and in general, the Israeli public listens to the experts and remains closed and locked down. They're very fearful of the Purim effect, the Megillah readings, of what's going to happen as a result of the many gatherings that took place. They still have some struggles within the ultra-Orthodox sector and the Arab sector in making sure that people remain indoors, but there has been more success in this field in the last couple of days. And I think, like here, everybody is preparing for the big hype, for the big climax of what's going to happen. There is a continuous struggle between the finance, the economy, and of course the Ministry of Health, and how to balance in between those two and to make sure that Israel's economy is viable. and people's lives are being protected. Just the same the discussion that we're seeing here. But all in all, like all of us, we're praying for the best and preparing for the worst.
Shahar, I appreciate so much. You know what, Shahar, you have family in Israel.
Correct.
Have you had any conversations with them? And when you have, are they nervous or are they pretty calm?
I have multiple conversations with them all the time. My mother is at home alone, unable to see the grandkids, not only those who are here, but also those who are in Israel. And I can tell you, Mark, that is one tough position to be in. Is it depressing? Yes, sometimes it's disheartening, but we hold on to each other in the hope that this too shall pass, just like Prime Minister Netanyahu said the other day, just like if we're headed in some optimism to create a national unity government, then maybe the coronavirus will succumb to the great tsunami of Israeli politics and will make way so that we can continue to live our lives.
Shahar, I love you so much. Thank you for always giving us time. Thank you for being part of JBS. You stay safe, be well, you and your lovely wife and your wonderful children, and you and I will speak, you and I speak off camera all the time. We'll speak again on camera very soon. Thank you, Shahar.
I'm looking forward, Mark, and to all of our viewers. Pleasure to be with you and looking forward to being again.
JBS Senior Vice President Shahar Azani was a very special way of explaining the complexities of Israeli life. Looking at the number of coronavirus deaths as of Thursday, March 26th, in the United States, there are more than 82,000 cases of COVID-19 and more than 1,100 deaths for a 1.5 mortality rate. While in Israel, there are some 2,700 diagnosed cases of the virus with only 8 deaths for a 0.3% mortality rate. And we are all reminded we can all stay safe from this pandemic if we stay at home and follow the rules, especially no hand to the mouth, nose, or eyes. May I also remind you that you're invited to email me the names of anyone who will be celebrating a simcha or someone who is ill whose name we can include in a mishberach, or the name of someone who has passed away for whom you have no synagogue setting in which to say Kaddish. And I'll do my best to read those names on JBS. And you may email me any picture you wish, and we'll try to include that picture as well. And if you've come across something you think would be moving to our audience at this time, a poem, a song, a video, please send it to us at jbscommunity@jbstv.org. Or maybe you've written a poem or a song or created a video yourself. Good for you. Share it with us. I can't promise we'll air everything we receive, but where we can, we will. Just email to our special new email address, jbscommunity@jbstv.org. Or you can mail me the same information to our Stamford, Connecticut Post Office Box at Post Office Box 360, Stamford, Connecticut 06904. And no donation is required, though with Passover coming, any tax-deductible donation you can send us will be most helpful during this coronavirus pandemic. You can send tax-deductible checks to the same P.O. Box in Stamford, Post Office Box 360, Stamford, Connecticut 06904. And speaking of Passover, we've received many requests from viewers who won't be able to share a Seder with family this year, and they're asking us if JBS will be televising any kind of Seder, and the answer is yes. Rabbi Mark Schneier of Hampton Synagogue will be hosting a Seder, and I hope you prepare your own Seder table and then celebrate with him and the entire JBS family. And we're working on other programming for the first 2 Seder nights. And of course, we'll have Passover services from Central Synagogue, and a Passover program from the Hampton Synagogue on each of the first days of Passover. We're all in this together, my friends, and JBS is here for you. My thanks as always to our director Sloan Copeland, JBS's managing director Dara Golub, to our technical wizards Michael Paley and Serge Goldberg, and to our senior producer Carol Lilienthal. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be safe and be well, my friends.